Marcus Chen had always been terrible at diplomacy. His commanding officers knew it, his fellow soldiers knew it, and, most importantly, he knew it. Which made his current assignment aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony feel like some cosmic joke. The ship hummed around him as he walked through the pristine corridors, his boots clicking against the polished metal floors. Everything about this place screamed important diplomatic mission, from the perfectly maintained walls to the crew members who actually pressed their uniforms. Marcus tugged at his own uniform, feeling like a fraud in the starched fabric.
"Shun!" Captain Rodriguez's voice boomed down the hallway. "Conference room, now!"
Marcus jogged to catch up with the captain, a woman whose reputation for getting things done was matched only by her ability to make grown Marines cry during training.
She didn't look at him as they walked. "Sir, with respect, why am I here?"
Marcus asked for what felt like the 100th time since boarding the ship 3 days ago.
"I'm infantry. I shoot things and blow stuff up. This is a peace mission."
Rodriguez finally glanced at him, one eyebrow raised.
"Because sometimes, Chen, we need someone who thinks differently."
The Zephyrians have been impossible to negotiate with for 2 years.
Every diplomat we've sent has failed. Maybe we need someone who isn't trying to be diplomatic.
They entered the conference room where a dozen officers sat around a holographic display showing the Zephyrian homeworld. The planet looked like a jewel suspended in space, swirling purple and gold clouds covering vast oceans and crystalline cities that sparkled even from orbit.
"Gentlemen, ladies," Rodriguez addressed the room, "we'll be entering Zephyrian space in 6 hours.
Our mission is simple in concept, impossible in execution.
We need to convince them to allow human ships passage through their territory. Without it, our supply lines to the outer colonies are cut off."
An older diplomatic officer, Ambassador Wells, leaned forward.
"The Zephyrians are unique.
They communicate through a combination of vocal tones, color changes in their skin, and what our xenobiologists believe are pheromone releases. They find human communication crude and offensive."
"How offensive?" Marcus asked.
Wells grimaced. The last ambassador accidentally proposed marriage to their military commander while trying to discuss trade agreements. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Marcus stared at the holographic planet, watching it slowly rotate.
"What do we know about their culture? Family structures? Social hierarchies?" Their matriarchal, Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's xenobiologist, spoke up. "Ruled by a council of princesses, each representing different regions of their homeworld.
The eldest princess, Kithara, holds ultimate authority, but decisions are made collectively."
"Princesses," Marcus repeated. "Not queens?"
The title translates roughly to daughter of the sky. They believe their authority comes from celestial bodies, specifically their 3 moons.
"A queen would imply earthbound power, which they consider lesser."
Rodriguez pointed at the display. "Our job is to get an audience with this council and somehow convince them that humans aren't the barbaric warmongers they think we are."
"Are we?" Marcus asked without thinking.
The room turned to stare at him.
Ambassador Wells looked scandalized.
"I mean," Marcus continued, realizing he might as well commit to the thought, "from their perspective. We show up in warships, demand passage through their space, and, when they say no, we send more diplomats.
If aliens did that to Earth, what would we think?"
Rodriguez actually smiled.
"Exactly why you're here, Chen. Keep thinking like that."
The next few hours passed in a blur of briefings and preparation. Marcus learned about Zephyrian art, music, and philosophy while simultaneously memorizing their basic greeting rituals. The more he learned, the more he realized how little they actually understood about these beings. Zephyrians were roughly humanoid but taller, with skin that shifted through various shades of blue, purple, and silver depending on their emotional state. They had large, expressive eyes that took up nearly a quarter of their faces, and their voices could produce harmonics that human ears couldn't fully appreciate. One more thing, Dr. Kim mentioned as they prepared for orbital insertion. Zephyrians find human laughter particularly disturbing. It apparently sounds like their equivalent of screaming in pain.
"Great," Marcus muttered. Don't laugh at the aliens. Got it.
The Harmony dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system, immediately surrounded by elegant ships that looked more like works of art than military vessels. Their hulls were smooth and curved, with surfaces that seemed to shift color like oil on water. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a Zephyrian officer whose skin currently displayed deep purple patterns. When they spoke, the universal translator struggled with the complex harmonics.
Human vessel, you are not welcome in Zephyrian space. State your business quickly. Ambassador Wells stepped forward, his posture rigid with practiced diplomatic protocol.
Honored representatives of the Zephyrian people, we come in peace seeking an audience with your ruling council to discuss matters of mutual benefit.
The alien's skin shifted to what looked like an angry red.
Your words carry the stench of deception, human. Your kind knows only conquest and consumption.
Now wait just a minute, Marcus said, stepping into view of the screen before anyone could stop him.
The Zephyrian's large eyes focused on him with obvious surprise.
Marcus realized he had everyone's attention and absolutely no idea what to say next.
So he did what felt natural.
Look, I get it. Humans have a pretty terrible reputation out here.
We blow things up, we're loud, and, apparently, we accidentally propose marriage to people when we're trying to be friendly. The Zephyrian's skin flickered with what might have been confusion.
But, honestly?
We're just trying to get food and medical supplies to some colonies that are having a rough time. If there's another route that doesn't go through your space, we'd love to hear about it. The alien officer stared at him for a long moment.
You speak differently than other humans.
I'm not a diplomat, Marcus said. I'm just a guy who'd really like to help some people who need help. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the Zephyrian responded. You will be permitted to approach our homeworld. A shuttle will escort you to the capital.
You may bring 3 representatives. The transmission ended, leaving the conference room in stunned silence. Well, Rodriguez said finally, congratulations, Chen.
You just did what our best diplomats couldn't.
What did I do?
You told the truth.
The shuttle ride to the Zephyrian homeworld was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced.
The escort vessel was piloted by a Zephyrian whose skin remained a steady, calming blue throughout the journey. They didn't speak, but, occasionally, musical tones would emerge from their throat that seemed to harmonize with the ship's engines. Marcus sat with Ambassador Wells and Dr. Kim, watching the planet grow larger through the viewport. Up close, the cities were even more magnificent. Spires of what looked like living crystal reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float unsupported. Remember, Wells said for the 10th time, no sudden movements, no direct eye contact unless invited, and absolutely no physical contact without permission.
And no laughing, Dr. Kim added.
Right, no laughing at the beautiful crystal city.
Got it.
They landed at what was clearly a diplomatic facility, a series of interconnected domes surrounded by gardens that defied every law of physics Marcus knew. Plants grew in impossible spirals, and water flowed upward in delicate streams that somehow never fell. A delegation of Zephyrians waited for them, led by a figure whose skin shifted through colors Marcus had never seen before. Dr. Kim whispered that the patterns indicated high status and cautious curiosity. I am Counselor Vexhai, the lead Zephyrian said, their voice producing harmonics that made Marcus feel oddly peaceful. You will be brought before Princess Kithara shortly. Your unusual approach has intrigued our leadership. They were escorted through corridors that seemed to be grown rather than built, the walls curving organically and pulsing with soft light. Marcus found himself staring at everything, trying to understand how any of it was possible.
Don't gawk, Wells hissed under his breath. I'm not gawking. I'm observing. There's a difference.
They entered a vast chamber with a ceiling that showed the planet's 3 moons in real time, complete with their phases and orbital patterns. At the center of the room stood 7 figures, each one radiating an authority that needed no translation. The central figure was clearly Princess Kithara. She was taller than the others, with skin that shifted through shades of deep blue and silver. Her eyes were the largest Marcus had seen yet, and, when she looked at him, he felt like she could see straight through to his thoughts. "So," Princess Kythera said, her voice carrying undertones that seemed to resonate in Marcus's chest, "you are the human who speaks without the poison of false courtesy." Marcus looked at Ambassador Wells, who nodded encouragingly. Apparently, this was his show now. "Your Highness," Marcus began, then stopped. Something about the formal title felt wrong. "Actually, can I ask you something first?" The other counselor's skin shifted to alarmed colors, but Kythera's remained steady. "You may ask. Do you actually want us to call you Your Highness, or is that just what the translation software thinks we should say?" For a moment, the entire chamber was silent. Then, Kythera's skin flickered with what Dr. Kim would later identify as surprised amusement. "Most humans speak as though they are reading from prepared texts," Kythera said. "They use titles and formalities that mean nothing to us." "You may call me Kythera." "Thanks. I'm Marcus. And, honestly, Kythera, we're in a bit of a pickle." The princess's head tilted slightly. "Pickle?" "Sorry, human expression. We're in trouble. We've got colonies that need supplies, and the only practical route goes through your space. We've been trying to negotiate passage for 2 years, but every time we send someone, it goes badly. Your diplomats speak of mutual benefit while their thoughts reek of superiority and conquest," another counselor interjected, their skin flashing angry reds. "Yeah, that sounds about right," Marcus said, ignoring Wells's horrified gasp. "Look, I can't speak for every human, but I can tell you why I'm here. There's a colony called New Haven that's dealing with a plague. Kids are dying. There's another one, Frontier Post, that's been cut off from food shipments for 6 months. People are starving." Marcus paused, realizing he had the complete attention of every Zephyrian in the room. "I'm not here to conquer anything or claim territory or establish trade dominance. I'm here because people are suffering, and the fastest way to help them involves flying ships through space you control. If you say no, we'll find another way. It'll take longer, and more people might die, but we'll find another way." Kythera's skin had shifted to deep purple with silver patterns Marcus hadn't seen before. "You would accept our refusal without retaliation?" "Of course. It's your space. Other humans have suggested that refusing their requests would have consequences." Marcus felt anger flash through him. "Other humans are idiots." The room went very quiet. "With respect to any other humans who might be listening, that was a stupid thing to say to you. Threatening people isn't diplomacy. It's bullying." One of the younger counselors stepped forward, their skin bright with curiosity. "You criticize your own kind? When they're wrong, yeah. Look, humans aren't perfect. We're actually kind of a mess most of the time. We fight each other over stupid things, we make terrible decisions, and, apparently, we're really bad at first impressions. But, when people need help, we show up. Sometimes that's all we're good at." Kythera exchanged glances with the other counselors, their skin patterns shifting in what was clearly some form of communication. Finally, she spoke. "Your words carry truth in their resonance," she said. "But, words are simple. Actions reveal character. You will remain as our guests while we consider your request. Quarters have been prepared for your delegation." As they were escorted out, Marcus caught Dr. Kim staring at him with something approaching awe. "What?" he asked. "In 30 years of xenobiology, I've never seen a first contact go like that. Is that good or bad? I have absolutely no idea." Their quarters were in a section of the palace that seemed designed for off-world visitors. The furniture was sized for humans, and the lighting was adjusted to something approximating Earth normal. Marcus found himself alone in a room with walls that showed slowly shifting patterns of light and color. He was examining what he thought might be a bathroom when a soft chime announced a visitor. The door dissolved, there really was no other word for it, and Princess Kythera entered. Up close, she was even more striking. Her features were elegant in a way that transcended species, and her eyes held an intelligence that made Marcus feel like a child trying to explain quantum physics. "I wanted to speak with you privately," she said, settling into a chair that somehow adjusted its shape to accommodate her physiology.
Should I bow or something? I never got the briefing on private royal etiquette. Kithara's skin flickered with what he was beginning to recognize as amusement. You may sit.
Marcus took the chair across from her, acutely aware that he was having a casual conversation with what amounted to an alien queen.
So, what's on your mind?
You interest me, Marcus Chen. Your diplomatic record shows no formal training, yet you accomplished more in one conversation than trained ambassadors managed in years.
I didn't accomplish anything yet. You haven't said yes.
No, but you made us want to listen.
That is more than others have done.
Kithara leaned forward slightly.
Tell me about these colonies you mentioned.
New Haven and Frontier Post. For the next hour, Marcus found himself describing places he'd never seen to an alien princess who listened with complete attention. He talked about the families on New Haven, how the plague had started in the agricultural districts and spread faster than anyone had anticipated. He described the reports from Frontier Post, where people were rationing food to make supplies last just one more week. These places are important to you, Kithara observed.
People are important to me.
I don't know these specific people, but they're somebody's family.
Somebody's kids.
Kithara was quiet for a moment, her skin shifting through thoughtful patterns.
Your species confuses us.
You wage wars over resources while simultaneously sending aid to strangers. You claim territory aggressively but risk your lives to rescue those who cannot benefit you.
Yeah, we're complicated.
Probably comes from evolving as tribal creatures who had to learn to cooperate on a global scale.
We're still figuring it out. And, you? What tribe do you belong to, Marcus Chen?
The question caught him off guard.
Humans, I guess. All of them. Kithara's skin brightened to what was definitely amusement now.
An interesting perspective from a species that rarely agrees on anything. They talked until the room's lighting began to shift toward night cycles. Marcus found himself fascinated by the way Kithara's thoughts seemed to flow through her skin in real time, making her easier to read than most humans he knew. I should let you rest, she said finally, rising from her chair.
Tomorrow, the council will hear your formal request. Any advice for not screwing it up? Kithara paused at the dissolving doorway. Continue being yourself, Marcus Chen.
It is refreshing. After she left, Marcus sat in the alien room, surrounded by slowly shifting lights, and wondered what exactly he'd gotten himself into. Outside his window, the three moons of Zephyr cast their light across crystal cities and impossible gardens. Tomorrow, he would stand before an alien council and try to convince them to trust a species they had every reason to fear. He had no training for this, no diplomatic experience, and no real plan beyond continuing to tell the truth. Somehow, that felt like exactly the right approach. As he finally settled into the bed, which seemed to adjust its firmness automatically, Marcus found himself thinking about Princess Kithara. There had been something in her manner, something that suggested this conversation was about more than just diplomatic negotiations. The last thing he saw before sleep took him was the gentle glow of alien constellations through his window, and he wondered if tomorrow would bring the breakthrough humanity needed, or if he was about to become the latest in a long line of diplomatic failures. Either way, he thought as consciousness faded, at least it would be interesting. Marcus woke to the sound of harmonious tones that seemed to come from the walls themselves. For a moment, he forgot where he was, then, the events of the previous day came flooding back. He was on an alien world, about to address an alien council, with the fate of human colonies hanging in the balance. No pressure at all. The bathroom turned out to be exactly what he'd thought, though the shower used some kind of sonic cleaning that left him feeling more refreshed than he'd ever been. His uniform had been cleaned overnight by methods he didn't want to think about too hard. A soft chime announced breakfast, delivered by a young Zephyrian whose skin displayed patterns Marcus was beginning to recognize as nervousness mixed with curiosity. The food was surprisingly familiar, fruits that tasted almost like oranges, a grain porridge that reminded him of oatmeal, and a beverage that had the caffeine kick of coffee without the bitter taste. Compliments of Princess Kithara, the servant said in halting standard. She hopes it meets your nutritional requirements. Tell her thank you.
It's perfect.
After the servant left, Marcus found himself pacing the room, trying to organize his thoughts.
Ambassador Wells had spent years preparing for negotiations like this.
Marcus had one conversation and a lot of nervous energy. Dr. Kim arrived first, her expression mixing excitement with concern.
Marcus, I've been reviewing the translations from yesterday. Some of the color patterns Princess Kithara displayed, they don't match anything in our cultural database. Is that bad?
I'm not sure. But I think she's more interested in you personally than in the diplomatic mission. Before Marcus could ask what that meant, Ambassador Wells appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd spent the night reviewing every diplomatic protocol ever written.
Chen, we need to talk, Wells said, settling into one of the adaptive chairs.
What you did yesterday was either brilliant or disastrous, and I can't figure out which.
Thanks for the confidence boost. I'm serious.
The Zephyrians have agreed to a formal council session, but they've made an unusual request. They want you to present our case, not me.
Marcus stopped pacing. What? But you're the ambassador. Apparently, I'm not the one they want to hear from. Wells's expression was carefully neutral.
Princess Kithara specifically requested that you serve as our primary representative.
I don't know how to do that. Neither did anyone else who succeeded at first contact, Dr. Kim pointed out. Maybe that's the point.
Counselor Vexhai arrived to escort them to the council chamber, their skin displaying formal patterns Marcus hadn't seen before. As they walked through the living corridors of the palace, Marcus noticed other Zephyrians stopping to watch them pass. Their expressions, if you could call the color patterns expressions, seemed curious rather than hostile. Your presence has caused quite a stir, Vexhai said. Many of our people have never seen humans who speak without hidden meanings. We're not all terrible at communication, Marcus replied.
Some of us are just terrible at everything else. Vexhai's skin flickered with what he was beginning to recognize as amusement. Princess Kithara said you would say something like that.
The council chamber was even more impressive in daylight. The ceiling showed the planet's 3 moons in their current positions, while the walls displayed flowing patterns that seemed to respond to the emotional states of everyone present. 7 thrones arranged in a circle dominated the center of the room, each one occupied by a member of the Zephyrian ruling council. Princess Kithara sat in the central throne, her skin displaying formal patterns of deep blue and silver.
The other counselors showed various combinations of colors that Dr. Kim would probably spend months analyzing.
Marcus found himself focusing on Kithara's eyes, which seemed to hold encouragement despite the formality of the setting.
Representative Marcus Chen of the human delegation, Vexhai announced, you may present your request to the Zephyrian Council.
Marcus walked to the center of the circle, acutely aware that he was winging what might be the most important speech of his life. He looked around at the 7 faces watching him, took a deep breath, and decided to treat this like he was talking to friends. Honored counselors, he began, then stopped.
Actually, before I start, can I ask you something? The counselors exchanged glances, their skin patterns shifting with surprise. You may ask, Princess Kithara said. Do you have families? People you care about who aren't here in this room?
Of course, one of the counselors replied, their skin showing puzzled patterns. Then, you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. Marcus clasped his hands behind his back, the way he used to when addressing new recruits. 6 months ago, a little girl named Sarah Martinez was playing in the gardens of New Haven Colony. She was 7 years old, loved drawing pictures of Earth animals she'd never seen, and wanted to be a doctor when she grew up. The room was completely quiet except for the soft harmonics that seemed to be part of Zephyrian architecture.
3 months ago, Sarah got sick.
The plague that's been spreading through New Haven doesn't respond to any treatments they have on hand. The medicine that could save her life exists, but it's on the other side of Zephyrian space. Sarah's parents watch her get weaker every day, knowing that help exists but can't reach her.
Marcus turned to address another counselor.
On Frontier Post, a man named David Kim, no relation to Dr. Kim here, has been rationing his family's food for 6 weeks. His youngest son asks him every day when the supply ships are coming. David tells him soon, even though he knows the standard supply route would take 18 months to reach them. The short route through your space could get food there in 6 weeks. You speak of individuals, one of the counselors observed.
Why should their suffering matter to us?
Because individuals are all that matter, Marcus replied. Nations, species, governments, they're just collections of individuals. When we talk about humanity's request for passage through your space, we're really talking about Sarah Martinez and David Kim and 10,000 other people with names and families and dreams. He walked closer to the circle of thrones.
You asked yesterday why you should trust humans. Here's my answer: you shouldn't trust humans as a species.
We're too diverse, too chaotic, too prone to making stupid decisions.
But you can trust individual humans to do what they think is right. Marcus looked directly at Princess Kithara. I'm not asking you to trust humanity. I'm asking you to trust me.
And Dr. Kim, who's spent her career trying to understand other species. And Captain Rodriguez, who volunteered for this mission because she knew colonies were in trouble.
Trust the humans who are here, in this room, right now. And if we agree, another counselor interjected, what guarantee do we have that other humans will honor any agreements we make?
None, Marcus said simply.
That's the risk you take with any agreement.
But I can tell you this, if you let us help those colonies, every person whose life you save will remember that Zephyrians chose compassion over caution. Every family that doesn't starve will know that you could have said no, but didn't.
Princess Kithara leaned forward slightly. You offer no trade agreements, no military alliances, no promises of future cooperation? I'm not qualified to offer any of those things. I'm just asking for help saving lives. Most diplomatic requests come with extensive documentation, Vexai noted. Treaties, amendments, subclauses. You offer only words.
Words are all I've got, Marcus admitted. Well, words and the promise that if you say yes, we'll remember it.
Humans are good at remembering who helped us when it mattered.
The counselors began communicating through rapid skin color changes, a conversation Marcus couldn't follow but could feel the intensity of. After several minutes, the rapid patterns settled into more deliberate displays.
We will recess to deliberate, Princess Kithara announced. You will have our answer before the day cycle ends.
As the counselors filed out, Marcus found himself alone in the vast chamber with his delegation.
Ambassador Wells was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Well? Marcus asked.
In 15 years of diplomatic service, Wells said slowly, I have never seen anything like that.
Good or bad? I honestly don't know. But if they say yes, it'll be because of what you just did.
They were escorted to a waiting area that overlooked one of the palace gardens. Marcus watched alien plants grow in impossible spirals while Dr. Kim took notes on everything she could see.
Ambassador Wells paced nervously, occasionally muttering about proper diplomatic procedure.
Marcus, Dr. Kim said suddenly, look at this. She was pointing to a section of the garden where a group of young Zephyrians had gathered. They were watching the palace, their skin patterns bright with what looked like excitement and curiosity. Word spreading, Dr. Kim observed.
Your speech is being discussed. How can you tell? The patterns.
They're displaying variations on what we saw from Princess Kithara yesterday, surprised interest mixed with cautious approval. More Zephyrians were gathering in the garden, and Marcus realized they were all looking up at the palace windows. Some were pointing at the diplomatic wing where the humans waited.
I think we're famous, he said. Or infamous, Wells added grimly.
The afternoon stretched on. Marcus found himself thinking about the colonies, wondering what was happening on New Haven and Frontier Post while he waited for alien royalty to decide their fate.
The weight of responsibility felt heavier than any combat gear he'd ever carried. A soft chime announced Princess Kithara's arrival.
She entered alone, her skin displaying patterns Marcus was beginning to recognize as formal decision-making colors. The council has reached a decision, she said, settling into one of the adaptive chairs.
But, first, I would like to understand something about you personally, Marcus-chan. What do you want to know?
Your military records indicate you are a combat specialist. You have fought in 3 major conflicts and received commendations for bravery under fire.
Why did your superiors choose a warrior for a peace mission? Marcus thought about it for a moment. Because sometimes the best way to make peace is to send someone who understands the cost of war. Explain. Diplomats see negotiations as puzzles to solve. Military people see them as lives to save or lose. When you've watched people die because of failed negotiations, you get really motivated to make the next negotiation succeed. Kithara's skin shifted to thoughtful patterns. You have lost people? Yeah. Too many. Marcus looked out at the gathered Zephyrians in the garden.
There was a colony called Meridian Station. Pirates were raiding their supply ships, and the local government couldn't protect them. We were supposed to negotiate a protection agreement, but the talks dragged on for months while politicians argued about jurisdiction and authority. By the time we finally got approval to act, half the colonists had been killed or captured.
You blame the diplomats? I blame everyone who put procedure ahead of people. Including myself for not speaking up sooner.
Princess Kithara was quiet for several minutes, her skin cycling through patterns Marcus couldn't interpret.
Finally, she spoke.
The Council has voted to grant limited passage rights to human vessels carrying medical supplies and humanitarian aid. Ships will be escorted through our space and inspected to ensure they carry only approved materials. Marcus felt relief flood through him.
Thank you.
You have no idea how many lives this will save. The decision was not unanimous, Kithara continued.
Several counselors believe humans will abuse this privilege and use it to establish a permanent presence in our territory. Will they be proven right? I do not know.
That will depend on whether other humans are like you, Marcus Chen, or like the diplomats who came before. Marcus stood and offered what he hoped was an appropriate bow. I'll do everything I can to make sure the good humans are the ones who come through your space. There is one more condition, Princess Kithara said, and something in her tone made Marcus look up sharply. The Council requires that human ships be accompanied by a Zephyrian observer to ensure compliance with our agreement.
That sounds reasonable.
I have volunteered to serve as that observer.
Marcus blinked. You?
But you're
a princess, yes. Which means my presence will carry the full authority of the Zephyrian Council.
Her skin flickered with patterns that might have been amusement. It also means I will have the opportunity to observe humanity directly rather than relying on reports from others.
You want to come with us?
I want to see these colonies you spoke of. I want to meet Sarah Martinez and David Kim if they survive long enough. I want to understand what kind of species risks interstellar war to help strangers. Marcus realized his mouth was hanging open and closed it quickly.
That would be incredible. But, are you sure? Space travel with humans isn't exactly luxurious. I believe I can adapt.
Besides, and now her skin definitely showed amusement, someone needs to make sure you do not accidentally propose marriage to any other alien leaders.
The comment was so unexpected that Marcus felt laughter bubbling up before he could stop it.
He caught himself just in time, remembering Dr. Kim's warning about how Zephyrians perceived human laughter.
Something amuses you? Kithara asked, her skin pattern shifting to curiosity.
Just the mental image of me accidentally collecting alien spouses across the galaxy, Marcus said.
Sorry, I know laughing is considered disturbing to your people. Kithara tilted her head. Who told you that?
Dr. Kim mentioned that human laughter sounds like screaming in pain to Zephyrians. Dr. Kim is referring to the harsh, aggressive laughter your previous diplomats displayed when they thought they had gained advantage in negotiations. That laughter was disturbing because it revealed predatory intentions.
Kithara's skin shifted to gentle, warm patterns.
The sound you just suppressed was entirely different. It carried genuine joy and shared humor.
So I can laugh? You may do whatever brings you honest happiness, Marcus Chen. That is part of what makes you different from other humans we have encountered.
Marcus felt a grin spreading across his face. In that case, Princess, I think this is going to be the start of a very interesting partnership. Indeed, Kithara replied, and, for the first time since he'd met her, Marcus heard what might have been laughter in the harmonics of her voice.
I believe you are correct.
Outside the window, the three moons of Zephyr were beginning to rise, casting their combined light across the crystal cities and impossible gardens. Tomorrow, they would begin the journey back to human space, carrying with them not just an agreement for safe passage, but the beginning of something Marcus didn't have a name for yet. He looked at Princess Kithara, her skin displaying patterns of anticipation and cautious excitement, and realized that his simple mission to help dying colonists had somehow become something much more complex and much more important. One question, Marcus said as they prepared to rejoin the others.
What do I call you when we're traveling together?
Your Highness seems kind of formal for long space flights.
Kithara's skin flickered with what he was certain was amusement now. My friends call me Kentucky.
Friends?
I believe that is what you and I are becoming, Marcus-chan.
Despite the diplomatic complexities, despite the cultural differences, despite the fact that you represent a species my people have every reason to distrust. She paused at the doorway, her skin cycling through thoughtful patterns. Sometimes, friendship begins with nothing more than one person deciding to trust another. As they walked back to rejoin Ambassador Wells and Dr. Kim, Marcus found himself thinking that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand what diplomacy was really supposed to be about. Not treaties and trade agreements and formal protocols, but one person talking to another person and finding common ground in their shared desire to help others. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but, for the first time since boarding the Harmony, Marcus felt like he actually knew what he was doing. Even if he had absolutely no idea what he was getting himself into. The journey back to the Harmony was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. Princess Kithara, Kai, he corrected himself, traveled in her own ship, a vessel that looked like it had been grown from crystal and starlight. The two ships flew in formation toward the edge of Zephyrian space, where the first humanitarian convoy was already waiting. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Harmony, watching Kai's ship through the viewport. Its hull shifted colors and patterns that seemed to respond to stellar radiation, making it look alive as it moved through space. Contact from Princess Kithara, the communications officer announced. Put her through. Kai's image appeared on the screen, and Marcus noticed she'd changed her appearance for space travel. Her ceremonial robes had been replaced by a form-fitting suit that seemed to enhance the color patterns of her skin rather than hide them. Marcus, she said, and he could hear something like excitement in the harmonics of her voice, your convoy is much larger than I expected.
Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the assembled ships. 12 vessels loaded with medical supplies, food, and emergency equipment. It was the largest humanitarian convoy humanity had mounted in over a decade. Word got out about the mission, Captain Rodriguez explained, moving to stand beside Marcus. When other colonies heard that passage through Zephyrian space was possible, they started contributing supplies. We've got enough here to help 6 different settlements.
Your people responded quickly, Kai observed.
That's what we do, Marcus said.
When someone needs help, humans tend to pile on until the problem's solved.
Sometimes it's inefficient, but it gets results.
They made the jump to hyperspace together, the human convoy following Kai's ship through the established navigation corridors of Zephyrian space. During the 3-day journey to New Haven Colony, Marcus found himself in daily communication with Kai, discussing everything from human culture to Zephyrian philosophy. Your species fascinates me, Kai said during one of their conversations. You create art that celebrates individual achievement while simultaneously organizing yourselves into collective societies. The contradiction should make you unstable, yet somehow it makes you stronger. Maybe the contradiction is the point, Marcus suggested.
We need both individual creativity and group cooperation to survive.
The tension between them keeps us adapting. Zephyrians value harmony above all else, Kai explained. Our society seeks to eliminate contradiction and conflict. It has given us peace and stability for thousands of years.
But, has it given you growth?
The question seemed to surprise her.
What do you mean? If everyone agrees all the time, how do you know when you're wrong? How do you discover new ideas? Kai's skin shifted through thoughtful patterns visible even through the communication link. We have protocols for introducing new concepts. Protocols. Right. Marcus grinned. Has anyone ever told your council that their protocols are stupid? Of course not. That would be helpful? Look, I'm not saying conflict is always good, but sometimes you need someone to stand up and say this isn't working before you can find something better. Is that what you did with our council? Marcus thought about it. I guess so. But I wasn't trying to cause conflict. I was just trying to tell you the truth. Perhaps, Kai said slowly, that is the same thing. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Haven system, and Marcus felt his breath catch. The colony was smaller than he'd expected, a handful of domed settlements on a world that looked like it was barely capable of supporting life. The stark landscape was broken by the geometric patterns of agricultural zones and the gleaming medical facility that served as the colony's heart. Incoming transmission from New Haven Control, the communications officer announced. This is Dr. Elena Santos, New Haven Colony Administrator, a tired voice said over the comm, please identify yourselves. This is Captain Rodriguez of the UES Harmony, humanitarian convoy with medical supplies and aid. We're here to help with your plague situation. The silence that followed was so long Marcus wondered if the transmission had been lost. When Dr. Santos spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. Did you say medical supplies? How did you get here so fast? We had some help from new friends, Marcus said, stepping closer to the comms. We'll be docking within the hour. Can you have your medical team ready to receive the supplies? We'll be ready. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. As they approached the colony, Marcus could see the signs of the crisis. Several agricultural domes stood empty, their automated systems maintaining sterile environments where crops would never grow. The medical facility showed the harsh lighting of an emergency operation running at maximum capacity. Princess Kai's ship docked at the same time as the Harmony, and Marcus found himself waiting nervously at the airlock. This would be Kai's first time setting foot on a human colony, her first chance to see humanity at its most vulnerable. Dr. Santos met them at the airlock, a woman in her 50s with prematurely gray hair and the kind of exhaustion that comes from months of fighting a losing battle. Her eyes widened when she saw Kai emerge from her ship. Dr. Santos, Marcus said quickly, this is Princess Kithara of the Zephyrian Council. She's here as an observer for the aid mission. Dr. Santos stared for a moment, then collected herself. Your Highness, welcome to New Haven. Though I wish you were seeing us under better circumstances. Kai's skin displayed patterns Marcus was beginning to recognize as formal respect mixed with genuine concern. Dr. Santos, Marcus has told me about the work you are doing here. I would be honored to observe your medical operations, if that is acceptable. Of course. Though I should warn you, it's not pretty. The tour of the medical facility was heartbreaking. Ward after ward of patients, many of them children, fighting a plague that attacked the nervous system and left its victims progressively weaker until their bodies simply stopped functioning. The human medical staff moved with the desperate efficiency of people who knew they were losing ground every day. The plague seems to target genetic markers common in the Earth populations that settled this region, Dr. Santos explained as they walked through the children's ward. We've tried every treatment we know, but nothing stops the progression. Marcus noticed Kai had stopped at one bed where a small girl lay sleeping, her breathing shallow but steady. Her name tag read Sarah Martinez, age 7. This is the child you spoke of, Kai said quietly. Sarah, yeah. She's been fighting this for 3 months now. As they watched, Sarah's eyes fluttered open. She looked up at the adults gathered around her bed with the solemn curiosity of a child who had learned too much about being sick. Are you a doctor? She asked, looking directly at Kentucky. Kai's skin shifted to gentle, warm patterns as she knelt beside the bed. No, little one. I am a visitor from far away. My name is Kentucky. You're pretty, Sarah said with the blunt honesty of a 7-year-old. Your skin changes colors like the rainbow fish in my picture books. Thank you. I have heard you like to draw pictures. Sarah nodded weakly. Mama says when I get better, she'll get me new crayons so I can draw a picture of you.
Marcus saw Kai's skin flicker with patterns he'd never seen before, something that conveyed both deep sadness and fierce determination.
I would like that very much, Kai said. Perhaps by then, I will have learned to draw pictures of my own. They continued the tour, visiting the research labs where human scientists worked around the clock to understand the plague's mechanism.
Marcus watched Kai absorb everything, the desperate creativity of humans under pressure, the way they shared information freely and built on each other's work, the fact that every person in the facility was working beyond their normal limits because lives depended on it.
Your people do not give up, Kai observed as they watched a research team celebrating a minor breakthrough in understanding the plague's protein structure. Not when kids like Sarah are counting on us, Marcus replied.
The supply transfer took 6 hours. Medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, food supplies, and, most importantly, experimental treatments that had been developed on Earth specifically for genetic plagues. Marcus watched human efficiency in action, cargo crews working with the precision of a military operation while medical staff verified and cataloged every item. Kai stood beside him, her skin displaying patterns of amazement. Your species can be remarkably organized when motivated.
Crisis brings out the best in us.
And the worst, sometimes, but mostly the best. Dr. Santos approached them as the final supply pod was being transferred.
Marcus, I can't begin to thank you. We've got enough supplies here to treat everyone in the colony and set up preventive protocols for the surrounding settlements. Don't thank me.
Thank the people who loaded those ships, and thank Princess Kithara for making the passage possible. Dr. Santos turned to Kai with tears in her eyes.
Your Highness, you've saved lives today. Hundreds of them. Kai's skin shifted through patterns Marcus was learning meant deep emotional response. Dr. Santos, may I ask you something?
Of course. Why do you do this work? Your records show you could have a comfortable position on Earth, yet you choose to serve in a remote colony facing deadly diseases. Dr. Santos smiled for the first time since they'd arrived.
Because someone has to.
Because little girls like Sarah deserve the same chance at life as children born on Earth.
Because if we don't help each other, who will? That is what Marcus said to our council. Smart man, our Marcus.
Dr. Santos looked around the bustling medical facility, where the new supplies had already energized the staff.
You know, Princess, I've been fighting this plague for 8 months, and this is the first day I actually believe we're going to win.
As they prepared to leave for Frontier Post, Marcus found himself in the observation deck of the Harmony, looking down at New Haven Colony. Already, he could see signs of change. The emergency lighting in the medical facility had returned to normal levels, and several agricultural domes that had been shut down were showing signs of renewed activity.
You are thinking deeply, Kai's voice said behind him.
Marcus turned to find her entering the observation deck, her skin displaying the gentle patterns he associated with her more casual moods.
Just processing. This morning, that colony was dying. Tonight, it has hope again.
And, all because you decided to trust a human who had no business being in a diplomatic mission.
You underestimate yourself, Marcus Chen.
What you accomplished required skills no diplomat possesses.
What skills? I just told the truth.
Kai moved to stand beside him at the viewport.
You told the truth in a way that made others want to hear it.
You spoke of individuals while others spoke of abstractions.
You offered no guarantees except your own integrity. She paused.
Most importantly, you made me believe that humanity might be worth the risk.
Might be?
Your species is still being evaluated, Kai said, and Marcus could hear amusement in her harmonics.
Sarah Martinez drew a picture for me before we left. Would you like to see it?
She produced a small tablet showing a child's drawing of stick figures standing beneath rainbow-colored trees. One of the figures was clearly human, the other had the elongated proportions of a Zephyrian and was surrounded by swirls of color. She said it shows us being friends, Kai explained. She wanted to make sure I knew that humans and Zephyrians could be happy together. Marcus stared at the simple drawing, feeling something tight in his chest.
Kids see things so clearly. Yes, they do. Which is why I find myself hoping that Sarah's vision of the future is correct.
They stood together in comfortable silence, watching New Haven colony shrink behind them as the Harmony prepared for the next jump. In the distance, Kai's ship maintained its elegant formation, its hull shifting through colors that seemed to echo the patterns of distant stars.
Kai, Marcus said finally, can I ask you something personal?
You may ask.
Why did you really volunteer to come with us? I know you said you wanted to observe humanity, but there's more to it than that, isn't there? Kai's skin shifted through several patterns before settling on something Marcus didn't recognize. You are very perceptive. Comes from being around humans who lie badly.
You're much more honest, but you're still holding something back. The Zephyrian Council has been debating humanity for 2 years, Kai said slowly. Some believe your species represents a threat that will eventually require decisive action.
Others believe you could become valuable allies.
The decision we make will affect both our species for generations. And you're here to gather intelligence for that decision. I am here to understand who you really are, Marcus Chen.
Because somehow, you have become the face of humanity for the Zephyrian people.
She turned to look at him directly. What I report to the council will shape their final judgment. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders.
No pressure at all.
I did not mean to burden you with this knowledge.
I'd rather know. Secrets have a way of causing problems later.
Marcus looked out at the stars streaming past. Besides, I'm not worried.
No? You've seen humanity at its best today.
Doctors working around the clock to save lives, cargo crews loading humanitarian supplies, an entire fleet volunteering for a dangerous mission to help strangers. If that's not enough to convince your council that we're worth taking a chance on, then nothing I do will matter.
Kai's skin displayed patterns of thoughtful consideration. And if your species shows its worst aspects during our journey?
Then, you'll see those too, and you'll have to decide whether the good outweighs the bad.
Marcus shrugged. That's what friendship is, right? Knowing someone's flaws and caring about them anyway. Is that what we are becoming, Marcus? Friends?
Marcus looked at her, this alien princess who had risked her position to help strangers, who had knelt beside a dying child's bed with genuine compassion, who was now traveling through space to understand a species her people feared. I think we already are friends, Kentucky.
The question is whether our people can learn to be friends too.
I hope Sarah Martinez is correct, Kai said, her skin shifting to warm, hopeful patterns.
I hope humans and Zephyrians can indeed be happy together.
So do I, Marcus replied, though he was beginning to suspect that the future relationship between their species might depend less on diplomatic negotiations and more on the growing bond between a human soldier and an alien princess who had discovered they shared the same dreams. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched into lines as the Harmony jumped toward Frontier Post, carrying with it the hope of 2 species and the fragile beginning of something that might, just might, change the galaxy forever. The approach to Frontier Post revealed a world that was trying its best to die. Unlike New Haven's sterile medical crisis, this was raw survival, a mining colony on a planet so hostile that every day spent there was a victory against an environment that wanted humans gone. Marcus stood on the bridge watching the tactical display as they entered the system. Frontier Post consisted of 3 interconnected habitat domes built into the side of a mountain, connected by sealed tunnels that protected the inhabitants from the planet's caustic atmosphere. The mineral wealth that had drawn humans here was obvious. Massive strip mines carved geometric patterns across the landscape, but so was the desperation. Several of the mining platforms had been shut down, their automation systems cannibalized for parts to keep the habitat domes functioning. Incoming transmission from Frontier Post Control, the communications officer announced. A weathered face appeared on screen, a man in his 40s with the kind of premature aging that came from years of hard living in a hostile environment. This is Station Chief David Kim, Frontier Post. Identify yourselves.
Marcus stepped forward. Chief Kim, this is the humanitarian convoy from Earth. We're here with food supplies and emergency equipment.
David Kim's expression went through several changes: disbelief, hope, and, finally, something close to relief.
Did you say food supplies?
How? We didn't send any requests through normal channels.
We know.
The situation reached us through other sources.
We'll be docking within the hour. I need to. I should prepare the community.
Kim's voice was unsteady.
We've been on quarter rations for 6 weeks. People had stopped believing help was coming.
As they approached the colony, Marcus could see the signs of a community under extreme stress. Only one of the 3 habitat domes showed full lighting, the others were running on emergency power. The mining equipment that should have been moving constantly sat motionless, evidence of how desperate things had become. Princess Kai's ship took up position beside the Harmony, and Marcus found himself once again waiting at the airlock, wondering how an alien princess would react to humanity's most basic struggle for survival. David Kim met them at the docking bay, accompanied by a small group of colony leaders. Marcus noticed immediately how thin they all were, a hollow-eyed look of people who had been hungry for too long. When they saw Kai emerge from her ship, their expressions showed the same mixture of surprise and curiosity he'd seen on New Haven. "Chief Kim," Marcus said, "this is Princess Kithara of the Zephyrian Council. She's observing our humanitarian operations." "Your Highness," Kim said with the careful politeness of someone who had no idea what protocol to follow. "Welcome to Frontier Post. Though I have to warn you, we're not exactly at our best right now." Kai's skin displayed patterns Marcus recognized as formal respect mixed with concern. "Chief Kim, I am honored to visit your community. Marcus has told me of your situation, and I understand you have shown great courage in maintaining this settlement." "Courage or stupidity," Kim replied with a bitter laugh. "Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference." The tour of Frontier Post was a lesson in human adaptability under extreme conditions. The colony's 1,200 residents had transformed their mining operation into a closed-loop survival system, recycling everything from water to air to organic waste. What had been designed as temporary mining quarters had been modified with salvaged equipment into something approaching a permanent settlement. "We've been here 8 years, Kim explained as they walked through the main habitat dome. "The original plan was to strip mine the rare earth deposits and move on, but the minerals here are too valuable to abandon." Marcus watched Kai absorb the details of human survival engineering, hydroponic gardens jury-rigged from mining equipment, living spaces carved out of storage areas, children playing games that had been invented specifically for life in sealed habitats. It was humanity at its most resourceful, making the impossible work through sheer determination. "Your people adapted quickly to this environment," Kai observed. "Had to," Kim replied. "The planet doesn't give you a choice. Either you figure out how to live here, or you die here." They stopped at the colony school, where 30 children of various ages sat in a room that had clearly been designed for equipment storage. The teacher, a young woman named Lisa Chen, apparently no relation to David Kim despite the shared surname, was conducting a lesson on Earth history using a holographic display that was obviously ancient and jury-rigged. "We try to make sure the kids remember where they came from," Lisa explained. "Most of these children have never seen Earth, never breathed unfiltered air or seen a natural sky. But we want them to understand they're part of something larger than this one colony." One of the children, a boy who couldn't have been more than 10, raised his hand. "Miss Chen, is it true that Earth has water you can swim in without protective suits?" "That's right, Tommy. Oceans and lakes and rivers where you can swim and fish and boat." "Will I ever see them?" Lisa's expression faltered for just a moment. "Maybe someday, Tommy. Maybe someday." Marcus noticed Kai's skin had shifted to patterns he hadn't seen before, something that conveyed deep emotional response mixed with what might have been anger. As they continued the tour, visiting the hydroponics bays where engineers had coaxed food from equipment designed for mineral processing, Marcus saw Kai taking in every detail. The human capacity for making do with inadequate resources, the way the community had organized itself around collective survival, the fact that people were still teaching children about art and music and literature even when they weren't sure there would be food tomorrow. "This is not what I expected," Kai said quietly as they watched a group of colonists working to repair one of the air recycling systems. "What did you expect?" "Desperation. Chaos. People fighting over limited resources." She paused. "Instead, I see people sharing what little they have and working together to ensure everyone survives." "That's what humans do in a crisis," Marcus replied. "We pull together.
Not always.
Your history shows many examples of societies collapsing under pressure.
True. But it also shows examples like this. People deciding that everyone's survival is more important than individual comfort.
The food distribution was organized with military efficiency. David Kim and his logistics team had already calculated optimal nutrition distribution for every person in the colony. Marcus watched as families who hadn't seen fresh protein in months tried not to cry as they carried their supplies home. The psychological impact is as important as the nutritional one, Dr. Rodriguez from the convoy's medical team explained to Kentucky. When people start believing they're going to starve, it affects decision-making, community cohesion, everything.
Food security isn't just about calories, it's about hope.
Kai was documenting everything on her tablet, occasionally asking questions that showed she was beginning to understand the complex social dynamics that kept human communities functioning under stress. Why do some families receive larger portions, she asked, watching the distribution process.
Families with children or pregnant women get additional rations, Marcus explained.
And people doing heavy physical labor need more calories to maintain their work capacity.
But this means some adults receive less food so that others may receive more.
Right.
And they accept this willingly?
Marcus pointed to a man who was clearly thin from months of reduced rations, helping to carry supplies for a family with 3 young children.
What do you think?
Kai watched for several minutes, her skin shifting through patterns of what Marcus was beginning to recognize as amazement. Your species prioritizes the survival of your young above individual needs.
Among other things, yeah.
This is not universal among intelligent species. Many prioritize the survival of the strongest or most capable. Maybe that's why you haven't met many other intelligent species, Marcus suggested. Maybe the ones who only care about the strong don't survive long enough to reach the stars. That evening, the colony held what they called a Thanksgiving dinner, a community meal where everyone gathered in the main habitat dome to share food and celebrate their continued survival. It was a tradition that had apparently started during their first year on Frontier Post, when the colonists realized they needed something to maintain morale during the worst times. Marcus found himself sitting with Kai at a table made from repurposed mining equipment, surrounded by families who were eating their first full meal in weeks. The conversation around them was animated, people talking about plans for expanding the hydroponics bays, children asking questions about the supply convoy, adults sharing stories about the early days of the colony. "This is not how I imagined a starving community would behave," Kai said, watching a group of teenagers putting on what appeared to be an impromptu musical performance using improvised instruments.
"They're not starving anymore," Marcus pointed out. "Plus, humans celebrate when things get better. It's one of our better qualities."
A little girl approached their table, one of the children from the school earlier. She was carrying a small object made from what looked like sculpted metal. "Princess Kai," she said with the careful pronunciation of a child trying to be polite, "I made this for you." She held up a small sculpture that depicted a human figure and a taller figure with Kai's distinctive proportions, standing together under what were clearly meant to be stars. "My name is Amy," the girl continued. "I wanted to make you something to remember us when you go home." Kai's skin shifted through patterns Marcus had never seen before as she accepted the gift.
"Amy, this is beautiful. Did you make it yourself?"
"My dad helped with the metal work, but I designed it." "It's you and Marcus being friends in space."
"How did you know we were friends?"
"You stand close together when you talk, and you both smile the same way when you look at stuff."
"That's what friends do."
Marcus felt something warm settle in his chest as he watched Kai examine the sculpture with obvious delight. The simple artistry of it, created from salvaged materials by a child who had never seen a natural sky, somehow captured something essential about the unlikely bond that had formed between a human soldier and an alien princess. "I will treasure this always," Kai told Amy. "And, when I return to my homeworld, I will show it to everyone so they know that human children are artists and dreamers." After Amy left, Kai sat quietly, turning the sculpture over in her hands. Around them, the celebration continued. People who had been facing starvation 6 hours ago were now planning for the future, talking about expansion projects and long-term sustainability.
"What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked.
I am thinking that your species is even more complicated than I initially believed, Kai replied. In the space of one day, I have seen humans transform from desperate survivors to confident builders of the future.
The speed of that transformation is remarkable. Humans are pretty resilient.
It is more than resilience. It is the ability to maintain hope and community even under the worst circumstances. She looked up from the sculpture.
My people would struggle to understand this.
We avoid hardship, seek to minimize risk and discomfort. We have never had to develop the skills your species displays naturally. Maybe that's why we need each other, Marcus suggested. You've got stability and wisdom from thousands of years of peaceful development.
We've got adaptability and determination from thousands of years of struggling to survive.
Together, we might be able to accomplish things neither of us could do alone.
Kai's skin shifted to patterns he was learning meant deep consideration. Is that what you believe this is about, Marcus? Our species working together?
I think it started as a humanitarian mission and became something else along the way.
What kind of something else?
Marcus looked around at the celebration, at the humans and one alien sharing a meal in a habitat dome built into the side of a mountain on a world that tried to kill them every day. I think it became the beginning of a friendship between two species who have a lot more in common than either of us realized. Later, as they prepared to depart for the final colony on their route, Marcus found himself on the observation deck again, watching Frontier Post shrink behind them. The colony looked different now. All three habitat domes showed full lighting, and he could see mining equipment moving in the distance as operations resumed. Kai joined him at the viewport, the sculpture from Amy visible in her hands.
The transformation is remarkable, she said.
This morning, they were a dying community.
Tonight, they are planning expansion projects.
That's what hope does. Give humans a reason to believe things will get better, and they'll move mountains to make it happen. Literally, in this case, Kai observed, watching the mining operations resume. They are indeed moving mountains.
Bad joke. Sorry.
I am beginning to appreciate human humor, Kai said, her skin displaying patterns Marcus had learned meant amusement. It serves a social function I had not previously understood.
What function?
It allows you to acknowledge difficult truths while maintaining emotional equilibrium. The child Amy created art from salvaged metal.
The adults joke about their desperate situation while working to resolve it. Even in crisis, humans find ways to express joy. Marcus thought about that for a moment.
Maybe that's another reason our species should be friends. You could teach us how to avoid crises in the first place, and we could teach you how to find joy even when everything goes wrong. An interesting partnership, Kai mused. Though I suspect the learning would be mutual. As they prepared for the final jump of their mission, Marcus found himself thinking about Amy's sculpture and what it represented. A child who had never seen a natural sky had created art that captured the possibility of friendship between species separated by millions of years of evolution. If a 10-year-old could envision humans and Zephyrians working together, maybe it wasn't such an impossible dream after all. The last colony on their route was called Haven's Rest, a research station studying the potential for terraforming marginal worlds. Unlike New Haven's medical crisis or Frontier Post's survival struggle, this would be something different. A community of scientists and engineers working on problems that might not be solved for generations, driven by the human need to build something better for the future. As they entered hyperspace, Marcus wondered what Kai would make of humanity's tendency to work on projects they might never live to see completed. Another piece of the puzzle that was human nature, another chance for an alien princess to understand why a chaotic, violent, adaptable species might be worth taking a chance on. The sculpture Amy had created showed two figures standing together under the stars, friends despite their differences. Marcus found himself hoping that by the time their mission was complete, that simple childhood vision might become a reality for both their species. Haven's Rest appeared on the viewscreen like a jewel against the darkness, not because it was particularly beautiful, but because it represented something Marcus was beginning to understand was quintessentially human, the absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. The research station orbited a planet that was, by any reasonable standard, completely unsuitable for life.
Too hot, too much radiation, an atmosphere that would kill unprotected humans in minutes.
Yet the humans had been there for 15 years, slowly transforming sections of the planet's surface through a combination of atmospheric processors, radiation shields, and carefully engineered ecosystems.
This is Dr.
Rachel Park, station commander of Haven's Rest Research Station, came the voice over the comm. Please identify yourselves.
Dr. Park, this is Marcus Chen with the humanitarian convoy from Earth. We're here with supplies and equipment you requested 6 months ago.
The pause that followed was longer than Marcus expected. When Dr. Park spoke again, her voice carried a mixture of confusion and hope.
Marcus, our supply request was denied by Colonial Administration.
They said the route through Zephyrian space was impossible. Marcus smiled, looking at the tactical display where Kai's elegant ship maintained formation with the human convoy. Turns out impossible is a relative term. Document.
We'll be docking in 2 hours. Haven's Rest was unlike the other colonies they'd visited.
Where New Haven had been focused on immediate survival and Frontier Post had been about enduring hardship, this station hummed with the energy of people working on problems that fascinated them. The research facility sprawled across 3 interconnected platforms, each one dedicated to different aspects of the terraforming project.
Dr.
Park met them at the docking bay, a woman in her 60s with the kind of enthusiasm that made her seem decades younger. When she saw Kai emerge from her ship, her eyes lit up with scientific curiosity rather than diplomatic concern. Princess Kithara, Dr. Park said with a slight bow, this is an incredible honor.
I've read every paper published on Zephyrian atmospheric engineering. Your people's work on environmental harmony is legendary in the scientific community. Kai's skin displayed patterns Marcus was learning meant pleased surprise. You are familiar with our research? Familiar? Dr. Park laughed. Your atmospheric processors on Zephyr Prime are the most elegant engineering I've ever seen. We've been trying to adapt your techniques for hostile environment modification for years. You study terraforming?
Study, practice, live, breathe, dream about it, Dr. Park replied.
Would you like to see what we're working on?
The tour of Haven's Rest was unlike anything they'd experienced on the previous colonies. This wasn't about survival or crisis management, this was about the human drive to build something that wouldn't be completed for generations.
Dr.
Park showed them atmospheric processors that were slowly converting the planet's poisonous air, radiation shields that created pockets of Earth-normal environment, and carefully tended ecosystems where Earth plants were learning to survive in alien soil.
The project timeline is approximately 200 years, Dr. Park explained as they watched atmospheric processors work in the distance.
We'll never see the completed transformation, but our great-grandchildren might walk under an open sky on a world we helped create. Kai stopped at an observation window overlooking one of the test ecosystems, a small valley where earth trees grew alongside carefully adapted alien plants.
You work on projects you will never see completed?
The best human projects take longer than one lifetime, Dr. Park replied.
The pyramids, the cathedrals, the space program, humans have always built things for future generations. But, what motivates you to continue if you receive no personal benefit?
Dr. Park considered the question as they watched a group of technicians adjusting atmospheric controls.
Do you have children, Princess?
Zephyrians reproduce through collective decision-making processes. All young are raised by the community. Well, imagine you had children, and you wanted to leave them something better than what you had. Now expand that feeling to include all human children, everywhere, for all time.
That's what motivates us.
Marcus watched Kai's skin shift through patterns of deep thought as they continued the tour. The research station was filled with humans working on projects they'd inherited from the previous generation and would pass on to the next: genetic modifications to earth crops, atmospheric chemistry experiments, radiation shielding research, ecosystem balance studies. Your species has remarkable patience, Kai observed as they watched a team working on soil composition experiments that wouldn't yield results for decades. Not patience, Marcus corrected. Faith. Faith that the work matters, even if we never see the results. In the genetics lab, they met Dr. James Liu, a researcher who had spent 20 years developing crop varieties that could survive in the planet's modified atmosphere. His work was meticulous, methodical, and might not produce viable results for another decade.
Dr.
Lu Kai said,
studying the complex genetic modification equipment, do you ever doubt that your work will succeed?
Every day, Lu replied with a laugh.
But failure isn't really an option.
If we don't figure out how to grow food here, the terraforming project fails.
So we keep trying different approaches until something works.
And if nothing works? Then, we try approaches we haven't thought of yet.
Humans are pretty good at finding solutions to problems everyone says are impossible.
The supply transfer at Haven's Rest was different from the previous colonies. Instead of medical emergencies or survival supplies, they were delivering advanced scientific equipment, rare earth elements for the atmospheric processors, and genetic material for the ongoing ecosystem experiments.
Marcus watched human scientists unpack.